Morning, everyone. So, welcome again on our class in organization and management. So, we are in part two of leading. So, we are in week 14. So, communication applies to all phases of managing. It is particularly important in the function of leading. So, very important here the communication from the either level management to lower level management or vice versa. So communication is the transfer of information from sender to a receiver with the information of being understood by receiver. So communication is the basis for the communication process model. And in our topic today, we are about to discuss about communication. At the same time, the communication process model, which is focuses on the sender, the transmission, and also the good communication and feedback that facilitates the communication. So these are our topics, our discussion or lesson today. So we are about to discuss about the definition of communication, the communication process model, also the different types of communication, at the same time the communication flow, and we're about to tackle also the management change in diversity, at the same time the change management process. So first let us define what is communication. So communication is the transfer of information from a sender to a receiver with the information being understood by receiver. So we have the managerial communication in business, which enables people to exchange information and feedbacks within the organization and enables people to pursue the organizational goals or objectives. So here communication is about exchanging of information. At the same time, getting feedbacks either from the internal or external environment with the main purpose is to pursue or be able to achieve the organizational goals and or objectives. So why is it that communication is very important or needed in the management? First, communication is very important because it may able to establish and disseminate the goals of an enterprise. At the same time, it develop plans for their achievement. Also, it organizes human and other resources in the most effective and efficient way. So with communication, it may able to select, develop, and appraise or assess the members of the organization. And with the help of communication, it may able to lead, direct, and motivate and create a climate or environment in which people want to contribute. At the same time, lastly, with the help of communication, it may able to control the employees' performance. So the purpose of communication here is that to effect change. So the main purpose is with the help of communication is the change to influence action toward the welfare or benefits of the enterprise or business. Because communication is essential or vital for the internal functioning of the business because it integrates the managerial functions which about to establish and disseminate the objective or goals of the enterprise, to develop plans, to organize human resources and other resources, to select and develop and appraise, lead, direct, motivate, and create climate, and to control performance. This is the purpose of communication. So in the management process, we have different functions. And here we have the planning, organizing, staffing. So we already discussed, or I know that you already learned about what is planning and organizing, and we already discussed about staffing. And now we are in the leading. So last we are about to discuss the controlling function of management. So all of these 5 function of management is very communicated. There's need of communication in the different function of management, wherein it is about the exchanges of communication from the internal, which is in the internal function of the enterprise or organization, in exchange of ideas to the external environment like customer, suppliers, stockholders, government, community, and other external environment that influence the business, in exchange through feedback feedback to the organization or business. Because example, if we have your main target is customer, you want to know the feedback of your customers about your business or about your product. So here, you will first, before you communicate with the external environment, you need to undergo a planning stage wherein you need to plan about your business. So you undergo strategic planning, and then you need to organize your management or or people, and then you do a staffing, and then it is very important to have direction and leadership in the organization. And then you must have a control and evaluation about your business. The main important here, in order to function the 5 management functions, is that with the help of communication. So after that, you need to know the feedback of your customers about your product or services. So therefore, you must communicate with the external environment and get the feedback through evaluation or survey about your product, and go back to the again to the internal function of the organization. So the communication process model, so this is the communication process model from the thought of the sender. So the sender will going to encode the information or data, and then there is transmission of message. However, in the transmission of messages, uh, before they reach the receiver, there is a noise. So in the channel of messages, there is a noise that involved. So it can be that the information may be correct, or can be na their communication that or may result to miscommunication because of the noise or distraction or barriers in the communication. So here there's a noise. So it might be that it is not clear. So it's going back to the sender again. Or it can be na if after the transmission of messages, so there is reception, so of the receiver, decoding, and understanding of the receiver. So if it is clear now from the receiver, so after the understanding of the receiver of the message of the sender, it goes back to the sender. So, mag-reply yung receiver to the sender through feedback. So, same with the evaluation of example of a product. So, this is the seller. So, they have an idea. So, they will have undergo planning stage in the function of management. Then they will process encoding, and then they will market the product. So there will be a transmission of messages, and there will be receiving of communication from the seller going to the buyer. So receiver, decoding by the receiver. So they will taste the product, and then So the receiver will have an understanding about the product that offered by the business, and they will send feedback if they are satisfied or not satisfied with the product. So there are different types of communication here. We have the verbal communication, which about face-to-face or through telephone, radio, television, and other media. And we also have written communication through letters, emails, books, magazine, and also with the use of online platform or internet or social media. And we also have nonverbal communication that about body language, gesture, and how we dress or act, or even our scent. And lastly, we have the visualization as part of communication through graph, charts, maps, or logos. So here, these different types of communication helps the seller to communicate with their buyer. So it can be through verbal communication using the word of mouth, or using the different mass media in order to communicate with the buyer. And also about written communication through email or letters, or with the use of social media through posting reviews about the product. And also using the nonverbal communication like emotion or body language or gesture, or even how they dress or act. So that's why if you notice in terms of the agent or seller, they dressed well because it also represent, because they represent their company. So it is part of the nonverbal communication. And then through visualization, through graph, if you see, there are the simple illustration about the status of the product, or in terms of their sales, they use graph or chart to communicate with their buyer. And also with the use of their logo, it also identify, or they create identity or brand name to their business. Example, if you see SM, or do you see the image of a bee, or you think that oh, this is Jollibee, yeah, okay, then so it is part of communication using visualization. And also the map, map represent also, it identify where your location, or the store location of your store. So map also represent or considered as part of communication. However, there are barriers or breakdown in communication, or considered as a noise in the communication process. So it's some example of this, we have the lack of planning. So we have limited, we undergo limited communication in terms of planning, and also unqualified assumptions, and also semantic distortion, and poorly expressed message that will create a barriers or breakdowns in communication. Also, in terms of communication barriers in international environment, there is a loss by transmission and poor retention. At the same time, poor listening and premature evaluation, and impersonal communication. So wherein the seller is not communicating directly with the target market, especially in international market. And also distrust, threat, and fear, and insufficient period for adjustment to change, and information overload. So sometimes, due to information overload, we did not identify what is the important information. So sometimes we miss the, or we overlook the important information, and we consider the immaterial information, in especially in use in identifying problems, at the same time solving, creating solution. So there are different types of organizational communication. First, we have the formal communication, which takes place within the prescribed organizational arrangement. So it is within the organization. And for the informal communication, communication that is not defined by the organizational structure hierarchy. So it can be on the based on the communication of their friends, or communication with their teammates only. Yes. So it is considered as informal communication. So this is the difference between formal and informal communication. Wherein the formal communication, there is a official channel. So it can be through email, or they have a using now like Zoom. There is a Zoom link. And also, it is a planned and systematic part of the organizational structure, wherein the communication is between the middle level management, or the managers, and there is oriented towards goals and tasks of the enterprise. And then it is impersonal and stable and rigid and slow and structured communication. While informal communication, it is an official channel, wherein it is a communication between their office mate or close friends. It is unplanned and spontaneous. Can be that it is an emergency, or it's just a communication with their friends about their business, about their the status of their business, without any setting of dates or plans for the meeting. Or it can be cuts across formal relationship. It is directed toward goals and need satisfaction of individuals. It is personal and social, more of socialization, and it is flexible and unstable, and it is fast and unstructured. Because in formal communication, there is a more of impersonal, because it can be that is it must undergo formal letter or email, and it must disseminate to the authorized person. While in informal communication, it is just a simple a discussion without any unplanned topics, and then they're able to create a solution or ideas that may able to help their also their business or enterprise. So in the direction of communication flow, it can be upward communication, or you may call it as centralization. So upward communication, it is travel from subordinates or to the lower level management, going to the superiors or the upper level management, and continues up the organizational hierarchy. So it is communication wherein from the upward communication is decentralization. It's decentralization pala. Upward communication. So from the lower level management, so if they have any concerns about their their branch, so they need to communicate it to the next level, example to their manager and the or supervisor, and then going up to the manager, and then the manager will relay the communication to the head of or regional manager. Then the regional manager will communicate it to the example to the vice president. So it is considered as upward communication or decentralization. So from the lower level management going to the upper level management. When you say downward communication, it flows from people at higher level to those at lower level in the organizational hierarchy. So it is from the upper level management. The communication is from the upper level management. So if they have any policies or amendments on the policies or their company's procedure, or they have implemented another or new policies that needs to implement in different branches of the organization, they need to do a downward communication or centralization, wherein they in every branches they need to implement that policy. So it is called downward communication or centralization. And then we also have here horizontal. It is the flow of information among people on the same or similar organizational level. It can be that the manager, so if there is a different managers in different branches, excuse me, there branch manager in Visayas, branch manager in Luzon, and branch manager in Mindanao. So it is so if branch manager Luzon needs to communicate with branch manager Visayas and Mindanao, they will use horizontal communication, wherein they communicate in the same level, or vice president to vice president, wherein the vice president of human resource or administrative department needs to communicate with the vice president of operation. Okay, so this is an example of horizontal communication flow. So there are different guidelines for improving communication. There must be a need to for clarification or clarify the purpose of the message, because it can be that the communication is may misinterpret by the receiver. Therefore, there is need also for clarification of the message, and then also use in intelligible encoding, and then consult others' views and consider the receiver's needs. So it can be that the receiver needs is on they are limited also only to using email. So or they don't have internet. So you must adjust also to the receiver needs. So it's because it is useless to send your communication with using email if they don't have internet, right? So you can use cell phone to call with their concern. And then use appropriate tone and language and ensure credibility. And then get feedback. That's why in your letter, there must be a certain communication in the letter that the receiver needs to have feedback. So please acknowledge receipt thereof. So example, that's your communication. Please acknowledge. That's why the receiver, upon receiving the email, the receiver must reply to your email. Na, example, acknowledge receipt. Okay. And also, as part of getting feedback if they receive the communication. And then consider receiver's emotion and motivations. So you can be have a positive um, attitude in making your letter, or even in as in the start of your communication. And also very important in the communication is must have a listening process, or listen, because if it is more of talk than listen, so there is no proper communication. So next we have the management of change and diversity. So change management is refers as or defined as an approach to shifting or transitioning. So it means shifting or moving individuals or teams or organization from a current state to a desired future state. So that's why na in the goal of as a leader, using a transformational leadership style. You want a change in the management. So because you must not stay on the status quo or as is with as is with the current situation of the organization. You need to move. Okay, so you must go out with your comfort zone because there is a more discovery, or you need to explore, because it can be that through exploring you may able to discover or identify the possible opportunities that awaits you in order to achieve the objectives of organization. That's why you need also to go out with your comfort zone as a leader, and also you may encourage your followers um, to be creative also in their thinking or creating ideas, because as building an organization or management, you must there must be a change, which means about moving or shifting from the current state or current situation going to the desired state. Because if you're not going to move, you cannot achieve the your vision. If you are going to stay there, so in your comfort zone or in your current situation, there will be no change. That's why there is a change management. But then it's not easy to achieve this kind of strategy about changes. You want change, but it's a long process, and that's a tough process to that you're going to face. So in the change management, it's about the process, tools, and techniques to manage the people side of change to achieve the required business outcomes. So this is the change management process. We have three phases. So for the phase one, it is preparing for change. So in preparing for change, you must define your change management strategy. And then you may able to prepare your change management team. So you have that organization also in the change management team to plan and create a strategic actions and also decisions for the preparation of the change, and also develop your sponsorship model. And then for the phase two, is about managing change. So after preparing for change, it is in the planning stage. Then next is managing change. So you must develop change management plans. So after undergoing strategies, after ongoing strategies from different uh, brainstorming that made from by the change management team, is to create a change management plan that it will serve as a guide before implementing the project. And also take action. So that's the time to implement. Take action and implement the plans. So it is more of the implementation in phase two. And then we have the phase three. It's about reinforcing change. So after implementing the plans in the change management, it's the time to reinforcing the change. It's about collecting and analyzing the feedback after implementation, and also diagnose gaps and manage resistance. Diagnose gaps and manage resistance, and also implement corrective action and celebrate successes. So whatever the feedback, and then whatever feedback, you analyze the feedback, and then create a possible solution in terms of if there is gaps or problem that may arise in the implementation or in the result of the implementation. And then yes, implement corrective action. So you must have, so after getting the feedback, So you must take an action whatever the negative feedback that you receive upon implementation. And also it's time to, after providing corrective action, it's time to celebrate the successful result of the implementation and action. So it's time to celebrate the successes or positive the possible or sorry, achievable outcomes of the result. So here we have the Kurt Lewin's change management process. It's composed of three. It's about unfreezing. So in unfreezing, it is about creating the motivation and desire for change. And then it's time to move. So moving. It is designing and implementing the actual change. Then refreezing. It is reinforcing and stabilizing new methods, procedures, and behaviors. So there are different steps for successful change management. So first, there must be an increased urgency, which is about inspiring people to move. Because there are people, especially the old one, that they don't want to embrace the change. So they are comfortable in their comfort zone. They are comfortable with the current situation. So as a leader or as a top level under the top level management as a leader, it's your responsibility because you want to change, you want a change on your management. So there is a time that there are people or few people that they don't want to move. So it's your responsibility first to increase urgency, especially those who don't want to move, to inspire them and to influence them that they need to move from their current situation going to the desired situation or desired outcome or changes. Then next, build the guiding team or make a right people. So because you cannot make change in your management if ikaw lang isa yung gagawa. So you must have a people to work with you. That's why before making a change, you must choose or you must select the right people to be on your team with the same vision and mission and purpose about changes in your management. So get the right people and also get the vision right. So make your vision simple at the same because in order to create a effective strategies that you will going to use in your management and also empower action. So empowering your action, you must remove the obstacles or barriers that may hinder you in your in planning for the changes in your management and also create short-term wins. So you must have a short-term goals na short-term goals that may able to achieve easier. So you must not think first of the long term. There must be long term, but uh, as a stepping stone for the change, you must have a short term goals or objective first. Then don't let up. So it is about highlight, achieve, in future milestone, and then make change stick. You must stick uh, with your plans because as you wave change into culture because in creating or changing the culture of the organization is not easy, but as a leader that you want a change, you must even whatever the influence of others, especially they're going to instead that you are the one who influence them, so sila yung nag-influence sa'yo, so you must stick with your with your plan na you want change. So you must be the one who inspire them to change the change into culture, so that they will embrace the changes and make it as a culture, as their culture, na parang ano na lang, ano na siya, parang go with the flow na, because it became yung changes na na just a plan, later it will serve as a culture, or it will be the routine na. So there are different types of change. It can be a planned change, which refers to initiatives that are driven by a top-down in the organization, or emergent change, which refers to the situation in which change can originate from any level in the organization. So there are different areas of change in the organization. It can be strategic change, which is adjusting a company's strategy that involves a fundamental approach to doing business. We're in the markets it will target, at the same time the kind of products that they are going to sell, and how they are going to sold the product, and also about their overall strategic orientation, and as they expand in the global market, so their global activity, at the same time having a partnership with different businesses, or engage in a joint venture arrangement. And then we have also can be changes in the area of structural change. So changes in the organizational structure. So there will be a reorganization in the organizational structure, that because it can be that there is a problem with the organizational structure. Therefore, there's a change in the organization. So structural change. And then also another changes is through the process-oriented change, wherein the organization may need to re-engineer the process to achieve optimum workflow and productivity. Because it can be that there is a problem in the process of their product. That's why they are not able to achieve their target production or volume of their products. Therefore, there is a need to re-engineer the process. So, or the process or their methods. So that's why there is a need for process-oriented change. Also, it can be that it is a people-centered change, wherein the changes is on the personality or attitude of the employees. So a type of change alters, or there's a need or change of the attitude, behavior, skills, or performance of the employees in the company. Because if the management discover that their employees are not productive anymore, therefore there's a need for people-centered change, wherein if the problem is there is a lack of training, therefore the function of the human resource department is to provide strategic training that needed by their employees. Or it can be that the problem is the attitude itself of their employees. Therefore, there is need for disciplinary action or counseling to avoid the negative attitude, at the same time negative behavior. So here, in a people-centered process, it involves communicating, motivating, leading, and interacting within the groups, because it can be that the employees is not satisfied anymore with the incentives that they receive, or they are not happy to work with the company. Therefore, it's the company's there must be a company's action also, so that their considered asset in the management must develop also, or motivate to perform again, or to have an urge to do their job. Therefore, there is a need for change. Okay, then there are different causes for employee resistance to change. So there are employees that are not cooperating, especially in the changes in the organization. So the different causes is the lack of trust, or there is a perception that change is not necessary or needed, or they have thinking that change is not possible or it is impossible to change on that kind of situation, or there is a relatively high cost that will incur. That's why they don't want to change. And then there's a fear of personal failure. Also, the loss of status or power, especially in the structural change. So changes in order, there must be a reorganization. So once na may reorganization sa management or sa organizational structure, it can be na mag-iba yung kanilang status of their position. That's why they are afraid also to lose their status or power. Another is the threat to values and ideas, and social, cultural, or organizational disagreements. Or there's a possibility of resentment or interference, na it can be yung nag-implement ng change is galit siya. That's why na binablock na yung plan for changes sa isang tao lang. Then in managing the resistance to change, you must encourage the participation and involvement to all the members of the organization. So you need to encourage them to participate and involve in the planning stage. And then also, it is very important to have a proper communication and also educate them, because if their ideas or knowledge is limited only on what they are thinking about changes, that's the result, or that's the may cause with the blockage of in terms of changes. And then also we have the leadership. So as a leader, you must lead your people that changes is very vital or important in the organization for the improvement of not only the company itself, but the improvement of all. And then next we have the willingness of the sake of the group. And then timing of change. So it can be, yung changes na to is not, hindi pa ngayon, especially example, pandemic. So it can be na kulang yung funds or kulang yung tao na yung plan for change is hindi siya applicable. Okay, so that's the end of our discussion.